Hey everyone, Chris from CK Cycles here. In the last video, we got the cylinder head and cylinder off the engine and just took an initial look at it. In this video, we're going to take a little bit closer look at both the cylinder head and the cylinder. I'm going to be removing the valves and taking a closer look at the valve seats to see kind of what condition they're in. And I'm also going to be disassembling the piston, getting the rings off the piston and checking the ring end gap of the current rings in the cylinder. And then I also have a set of new old stock rings that I will also check the ring end gap, and we'll kind of compare the two, and at the end of the video come up with a plan for what we're doing to this engine. So let's get to it. That'll clean up nicely. I think I got to remove this retainer so I can get the rocker shafts out. And get the rockers out. Rocker shafts are threaded, so you can thread a bolt in, and then I think get them out. Okay, so yeah, you screw in a 6mm bolt. Seem a little stiff to me, but I could be wrong. They come out. Look pretty good. Kind of got to turn it at the same time as you're extracting it, it seems like. There it goes. That is the exhaust rocker. I'm sure they might be all the same part number and whatnot, but I'll keep them together. Intake rocker shaft. All right. Let's see if we can get the valves out. Alrighty. Now the springs, you can see there's a tighter coil here than there is up here. There's an inner spring, and it looks like there might be tighter coil down here, maybe not. But I like to make sure that I store these springs in a way so that I know, the tighter end of the coil was up against the cylinder head. And then the cap right here. And this is the exhaust side. So we will set it as it needs to be, like that. And usually, the manuals, I think, state, all of that as well. So there it is right there. There's the two keepers for the valve. So the exhaust valve should come out now. We'll get a better light on this. Yeah, we'll look at that more closely once we get the intake valve out. There's the intake. Alright, so let's get over to the parts bench, a little better lighting, and we'll inspect these parts. So the intake valve seat is looking pretty good. Now the exhaust is pretty crudified up, and there is some carbon deposits on the valve seat, and I think that that's probably what was causing my blow-by on the exhaust side. So carbon and oil. You can see that. There's a lot of deposits. So that's going to have to be cleaned out. We'll lap both valves in. Oops. We'll lap both valves in. I think that this head isn't going to have a problem after that. So, it really looks like this bike was run in an extremely rich setting. Yeah, there's deposits on the valve as well. I think a good cleaning and a good lapping in will take care of that. And I think that may have been the majority of my problem. For instance, you can see here on the intake valve, you can still see a shiny surface. So that was probably still making a real good seal on the intake side. But here on the exhaust valve, there's not much of a clean mating surface there. So I'm not sure how good of a seal the exhaust was making. So I think that was one of my main issues with compression. Now, would that have burned off if we got this engine out and ran it up as high as it could go and just burned and burned and burned? Yeah, it might have cleaned up. But we'll get it cleaned up this way. We'll completely freshen the top end and get this all cleaned out. I think it's going to run very, very well. Over here on the piston, I know there was some concern for possibly a stuck ring. See if I can get you in close enough. But all these rings are free. No stuck ring. So, alrighty. inside of the connecting rod there. Looks pretty good. I don't know if I'm getting it or not. Alright, let's look at this piston. Got some carbon on it we'll have to clean off. Go 3 rings. So to measure the ring gap, I'm going to do it here at the bottom at the skirt and at the top. I think the manual just showed measuring it here at the skirt, but I'm going to do it in both places. For the first and the second ring, you know, that's the top ring and the second ring, and then the oil ring is the bottom ring on this piston. The limits are a 0.15 to 0.35 millimeter end gap with a service limit of 0.5 millimeter end gap. And then for the oil ring, it's going to be 0.3 to 0.9 millimeter end gap. So I'm just going to check these out. So this is my first ring, or my top ring. Insert it here into the cylinder. Now I think that this can indicate ring wear, but it can also indicate, you know, I think if your cylinder is worn, you know, both. But I'm thinking if my gaps are within spec, probably my rings and my bore are still good. And I have a set of new old stock rings that I will also do this test just to see if there's any difference. So we'll start out and we'll push that ring down in evenly. I don't know, 3/4 of an inch or so. With the piston, so that's down in there nice and evenly. And I'm going to measure the gap that is in between the ends of the piston ring. You can see the gap right there at your 12 o'clock position. All right, so I have my 0.15 is the smallest. 0.15 millimeter. That goes in there very easily. And the limit is 0.35 millimeter, which is what this feeler is. And that is super tight. That almost won't even go in. Barely. It does go in, and it is tight. And the wear limit is 0.5 millimeter. I doubt this is even going to go in. Yeah. So anyways, this first ring, this top ring here, I would say is probably within service limit. Here at the skirt. I'm going to measure that against my new rings though. Second ring. The rings have different profiles, so you can kind of tell which ring it is. I think this is my second ring. That's your oil ring. That one's easy to tell. Let's see here. Yes. This This is my top ring right here based off of the profile. Okay, so let's put this in there. Looks good. Let's measure this one. 0.15 fits well. This is the 0.35. Won't even go in. No. It is tight. So the new ring has an end gap which is within the service limit, as it should. So that kind of tells me I think my bore is probably okay. And it is a little bit tighter than the first ring that came out of this engine. So I'm glad I bought a second set of rings, brand new rings. Okay, so now let's measure the second ring. This should have the same clearance as the first ring. Oops. And this one I can already tell the gap between the ends of that ring are quite a bit more. But let's get it down in there evenly and see what we have. .15. Oh, slides through. 0.35. Now this one barely squeezed into the top ring. Oh my. That one sliding through no problem. Service limit, this is the 0.5 millimeter. That even fits in there. So here at the bottom of the cylinder on the skirt, my second ring that one is worn beyond the service limit. I'm not even going to measure the oil ring because I already know I'm going to replace these. But let's see what the second ring looks like. This is the new old stock ring. Let's see how this measures. If this is within spec, then I think that just kind of helps me to assume that my cylinder is probably okay. We'll also measure it at the top. Okay, 0.15 fits in there no problem. 0.35 will not go in. Okay, so the second stock ring is within spec. Let's do the top of let's do it here at the top as well. Okay, this is first ring. Okay, 0.15, no problem. 0.35, snug, but it goes in. So once again, number one ring, top ring is within spec. Number two, .15, ooh, a lot of room. 0.35, a lot of room. 0.5 service limit. Oh, lots of room. So this ring is definitely well out of specification. Let's try the second ring. I already think probably my top ring is going to be within spec here, even at the top of the cylinder. Let's see what the cylinder here looks like with the second ring. That's the one that I have found to be out of spec. Okay, 0.15, slides in no problem. 0.35, this will tell us. Won't go in, it is very tight. Okay, so conclusion, first ring is in spec, second ring is in spec, both. here at the bottom of the cylinder and at the top of the cylinder, and I would say that the measurements were fairly close to being the same. The first ring was within spec. This is the used one here at the bottom and the top, but the second ring was beyond the service limit here at the bottom and the top. Like I said, I'm not even going to measure the oil rings since I already know we're putting a new set of rings in. All right, everybody. Well, that'll be the conclusion of this video. I think my plan of action that I kind of thought about as soon as I disassembled this engine is what I'm going to stick with. I'm going to clean up the head, clean up the valves, lap the valves in, new valve seals, new gaskets, and everything. And then when it comes to the piston, you saw that the top ring that was in the engine was still within the service limits. The second ring was beyond the service limit according to my service manual. So new set of rings are going to go on this piston, and then the cylinder and the cylinder head will go back on the engine. And that's what we'll get to in the next episode. See you later.